I want everything to be super clear and all of that fun stuff. So we have almost half of our friends here. So I'm going to just jump in and just start to tell you a little bit about myself, a little bit about what we're going to do here today. And then as people sort of hop on, they can join on in. So I want to welcome you to Discipline Made Easy. And I like to start with this quote. I really like it. And it's probably great to keep in mind as we're going through this webinar tonight. So I want you to remember that you're not managing an inconvenience. You're raising a human being. Now, we all know sometimes it might feel like we're managing an inconvenience, but we really want to think of ourselves as mentors. So we want to remember that we're not managing an inconvenience. We are raising human beings. So as we go along, we're just going to keep that quote in mind. I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about myself. Some of you might know a little bit about me, so I might be repeating. But for friends who don't know, my name is Brandy Davis. I'm a parenting coach. I'm also the author of Okay, I'm a Parent, Now What? I did also win Best of Philly, and the title is my favorite part. I got Best Modern Day Parenting Guru, and I thought that was super cool. That was not my choice, but I thought, I was like, that is amazing. That sounds so super awesome. So just a little bit more, I have a Bachelor's of Science in Child Development and Family Studies. I've also been teaching young children for about 22 years now. I want to apologize because my allergies have been rocking me this week, so I'm a little congested. I'm also one of the owners and operators of a small cooperative preschool in Philadelphia, and I teach classes, I do blogs, I also have clients on the phone and Skype if you really want to see me, which is fine too. And speaking of those classes and those coaching sessions, we're going to be talking about a lot of stuff here today. And while, of course, we're going to get to all of your questions, we may not get too in-depth with them because we only have a limited amount of time. And because I know that we may not kind of get to everybody's questions or answer them as much as you or I would want to, I always like to offer 25% off of 1 month of coaching. So if we don't answer everything, or you still have more questions, or you want to talk about something totally different, you can sign up for 1 month of coaching. It's 25% off. And you also, even before you start that, you get a free 30 minutes. So you guys can discover what coaching is. We can talk about what it is, talk about where you are, and talk about where you want to be. So cool. Awesome. Let's jump right in and talk about how we're going to make all this discipline so easy. So the goal for you guys today is to really leave with productive and positive discipline techniques that feel better for everyone and also really work. I promise. I use them every day. They totally work. I never give any ideas that I don't use myself. So I know this stuff works. It feels better for us. It feels better for kids, and you will see results. I promise. And I don't just promise stuff. And I am going to be honest. I know I said it's going to be easy, but you do have to put in a little bit of work. But with that little bit of hard work, you're going to see and feel the changes that you're looking for, and you're going to see and feel them fast. So let's start with, what's the point of discipline? Why are we doing this? Why is it important? Well, discipline is about imparting wisdom. It's about learning what is and isn't acceptable behavior in society, and that can be a hard thing to learn, especially when you're a smaller human that hasn't lived on this planet for that long. And let's be honest, we know some folks who never really learned how to function in society in positive and productive ways. And the thing is, kids don't really know that their actions affect other people, or at least how much they can affect other people. And positive discipline can help teach them, that hitting another person could possibly make them upset, or writing on the wall is not the best idea and will probably not be applauded by the adults around you. And also that yelling at someone hurts someone's feelings. While of course you can express how you feel and you can be angry and upset, yelling at someone can be very hurtful. And, you really want your kids to learn that their actions have reactions. And that's where discipline comes in. They get to learn that their actions and their choices will determine how their day goes. The other thing it does is it just sets boundaries because, kids want to try stuff. They're curious creatures. And some things are really great to try. And some things are really not at all great to try. Like, you don't really want your kids touching fire or running out in the street, or even, like I said, yelling at you or coloring on the wall, which is never really awesome sauce. And the thing is, discipline can help kids learn what is and isn't okay to try. And discipline doesn't necessarily mean punishing. It's merely, again, taking responsibility for one's actions. So it's not about screaming and yelling. It's not about taking away everything that they've ever owned ever. It's not always about big, huge timeouts. It's really just about those logical, connected consequences. So say your child's walking too close to the street, and you're like, listen, if you walk too close to the street, you're going to have to hold my hand. It's my job to keep you safe. Well, if they keep walking too close to the street, they're going to have to hold your hand. And we know that kids while they love holding our hands, they also love independence. So no yelling, no screaming, just a nice little reaction for an action, just a little bit of teaching life lessons. The other thing it does is it maintains consistency. And I got to tell you, even though it doesn't seem like it, kids love consistency. They love knowing what's expected of them. And if there aren't any reactions for actions, kids really won't know what they can and cannot do. And when things are unclear, your kids are going to choose the thing that they want to do. And oftentimes, it's not really what we might want them to do. So we want to be really clear and consistent. And I got to be honest, also, it's hard for kids to remember rules, especially when their emotions are elevated, kind of like us. Sometimes when our emotions are a little elevated, we don't make the best choices either. And if their actions affect them, and if they have reactions for those actions and have to take responsibility for their choices, they're going to remember those rules a little bit better. So if you tell your kids not to throw the blocks again and again and again and again, they're probably not going to really remember not to throw the blocks. But if you tell them, hey, listen, if you throw those blocks, it's not safe. I'm going to have to close them or put them away. If your child throws those blocks and you put them away right away, they're going to figure out like, oh, wait a minute. This whole throwing blocks thing, not working for me, not worth it. I'm not going to do that again. I'm not going to, go down that road. I'm going to choose something else. But you really need to be consistent. And that's kind of like one of the most important things of discipline, and I'm going to be repeating that a lot. Discipline, follow through, and consistency are going to be things that you're going to hear a lot. So it's really important to mean what you say and say what you mean. The other thing that discipline does is it keeps everybody safe. Like I kind of was saying before, you don't want your kids running into the street or touching fire or hitting each other. We don't want those things. So discipline can really keep kids safe and set those boundaries. And it's really important because, our job is to keep our kids safe. So if your kid has to hold your hands, or if you have to leave the playground because they're not being safe, that's when the life lessons really occur. And safe isn't just about bodies. It's also about emotionally safe too. If there aren't any consequences for kids yelling or being unkind to a sibling or being unkind to you or using words that are not thoughtful, they're not going to stop. And the thing is, kids can feel lots and lots of different things, and that's okay. And, I'm going to repeat this again too, like kids can absolutely be angry at us. We are not above their wrath. Like we get angry at them too. But, kind of like us, like they can't be tiny jerks. Like we don't want that. So discipline can help kids also learn how to express themselves in better ways, and also how not to express themselves, in ways that are very hurtful or not thoughtful, or, especially with friends and peers, ways that will make their friends very upset, and because we don't want that. Our job is to make sure that our kids are not hurting people's feelings and, not being bullies and all of that stuff. The other thing it does is it gets rid of unwanted behavior. Well, that's the obvious part, but it also puts a wanted one in its place. And this is the part that can oftentimes get left out. So, you know, we really want kids to understand what we want from them, because sometimes they know what we don't want. So they're like, okay, I know you don't want me to hit my brother. Like, I get it. But like, I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to do when he grabs things from me. So it's really important to put that piece of the puzzle in and to teach kids what you do want them to do. So you want to coach kids on how to deal with situations with their words and productive actions. So say a child knocks down their brother's blocks. Maybe we would go over and say like, wow, you guys are feeling a lot of stuff. Why did you knock your brother's blocks down? Well, he wouldn't give me the block that I wanted, and he was using it, and I was mad at him. Okay, I can see that you're upset. Next time, you can just ask your brother if he can, you know, give you that block when you're done. Why don't you try that right now? So you're going to give them the chance to redo the situation in the positive and productive way, kind of like role playing, because when we role play things, we internalize it a lot better than if we just hear it. So, points of discipline: teaches life lessons, sets boundaries, maintains consistency, keeps everyone safe. It gets rid of that unwanted behavior, and it puts that wanted one in its place. Does anybody have any questions, or are we good so far? Cool. So before we talk about what discipline is, let's talk about what it isn't. So discipline isn't random. We have to be clear about what we do and do not care about. Because we all know that some days we're like, yeah, you know, jumping on the couch, totally fine. Down with that, it's okay. And other days when we're tired, stressed out, our kids are jumping on the couch and we get really mad. Well, honestly, we can't do that. We have to be consistent. We can't let attitude go one day and they get super mad about it the next. That's really confusing to kids and they don't know what's expected. Positive discipline is predictable. It gives kids control over their day, their path, their life. They can weigh the reaction to the expected actions. So they can make choices knowing that, hey, every time I jump on the couch, mom and dad tell me that I have to get down or that the couch is closed. So discipline is predictable and they won't be confused. And that's good because confused kids, again, make their own choices and take their own paths. And I hate to say it, their path usually involves jumping on the couch, which could be cool in your house. Or maybe it's not because the coffee table's right there and no one wants to go to the hospital because that's never a fun day. The other thing it's not is it's not degrading or humiliating. So we've all seen images of kids in like signs like I didn't do my homework or I stole money from my parents, and that's on Facebook. Or a couple years ago there was this dad shooting their kid's laptop and put that on YouTube. And even recently there was something about there was a child that was bullying their friends and on the bus, and so the dad had them walk to school and videotaped the whole walk and then put that on Facebook. So this whole public shaming idea is very degrading and it's very humiliating, and we as grown-ups would never stand for that. That wouldn't be okay if someone did that to us. We really shouldn't subject our kids to that as well. Now, sure, when you get disciplined, it can be embarrassing. It's not fun, say at school, to stay in for recess while your friends are going out because you didn't finish your work. It's a little embarrassing, and that's okay, because sometimes when we're embarrassed, we are like, oh, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't have done that. Let me try a different path, and we make better choices afterwards. We don't want to humiliate kids. We don't want to bring that child up in front of the classroom, tell everybody that they didn't do their homework, make them feel bad about it, say that they're not going outside. That's humiliating. We don't want to do that. The other thing is, it's not about parent anger. It's not about us. Whatever our kids do, we just can't take it personally. And I know that's really, really hard. Because the thing is, the second that we do start taking it personally, we're not focusing on teaching those life lessons anymore, but we're focusing on our power and our pride. Because we want to regain that sort of authority back. Like, how dare you do that? Now I have to become the king and the boss and the queen again. But we don't want to do that. we want to focus on the task at hand. And that task, teaching life lessons. We want to teach our kids, again, what we do and do not want them to do. And these battles, these power struggles, will only divide us and cause even more misbehavior. So it's not about us. Sometimes we do need to walk away from the situation because, you know, we actually are really mad and our pride is hurt. But take a deep breath, go to your happy place, and refocus. And then when it's all over, you know, you can vent about it later. And that's all good. The other thing is it's not confusing. So say your child doesn't eat their veggies for dinner and then they proceed to like lose trains for the entire week. Those things aren't connected. Or maybe they hit their sister so they can't watch TV for the week. Well, those things aren't connected either, and they're very confusing. And kids don't understand why those actions are connected. And when actions and reactions are not connected, those life lessons can't occur. Also, when kids are confused, they get super mad. And when they get super mad, there are super tantrums, and there's lots of less listening. So we want to keep everything very, very clear. Does anyone have any questions about that or anything so far?
I have a quick question.
Sure. Yes.
Balancing consistency when you have a time constraint, meaning we have to be a certain place in a certain area. Kids are smart. They know that you want them to do this thing, and they kind of just in that particular day, they might not. They just want to do the thing that you don't want them to do. How do you balance consistency with, look, we got to get to this, we got to make this plain, something like that?
Right. So would that be like your child's not putting their shoes on?
Did you understand the question?
Yeah, I did. Like, so, but what would be like a little more specific example too? So like if you're trying to catch a plane, sometimes, say, you know,
right,
like, are they not getting out the door? Yeah.
Let's get, we've got to, we need to get to school. Mommy and daddy have to get to work. Your job is to make sure that you clean your, take your plate to the compost and do whatever. And that's taking too long. It's going to impact what mommy and daddy really need to do to sustain life.
Okay, to sustain life. No, I totally get that. So what you can do, and we're going to talk even more about this in a little bit, but what you can do is you can say, listen, it's your job to take your stuff to the compost. We have to go. You know, I'm going to count to 5. If you're not headed over there, then I have to do it. And when we come home, I'm going to ask you to practice doing that because I think you might have forgotten. And we're going to go a little bit more into practice later. But what practice is then she'll have to come home. And before she does anything fun, I mean, but bodily functions always come first because I always like to say that. She has to go to the bathroom. They have to go to the bathroom. But before they do anything fun, before they have, you know, their goldfish and start playing or watching videos, she has to take her plate to the compost. Even if there's nothing on it, maybe you can find something to put on it, but she has to practice it. And the reason this works is kids are smart and they're like, wait a minute, I don't want to practice something I know how to do. This is absolutely ridiculous. So sometimes you can put it off for a little bit later, and kids don't forget. People say that kids forget stuff, and they really don't. They never forget anything, ever, ever, ever. So you can be consistent, but you don't always have to be consistent in the moment if you can't be consistent in the moment. But consistency can happen later on. So you can always say, listen, you're going to have to practice that later if I have to do that for you. Does that make sense?
Perfect. Yeah, thanks.
Totally. Awesome. Does anyone else have any questions? Are we cool? Okay, cool. So I'm going to keep going. And if you guys have any other questions, you can definitely ask away. So let's talk about where we get tripped up, because this is the kind of stuff that can kind of derail discipline very easily. So one of the big ways we get tripped up is that we get caught in this power struggle. We begin to focus on just being right, on being the boss, on being in charge, rather than teaching, like I said, those life lessons. Instead, we need to stay calm, clear, and focused. Also, when we get caught in these power struggles, you know you're in the middle of it, and you're like, I'm seriously like having this full-on debate and negotiation with a 4-year-old, a 3-year-old, a 7-year-old, a 5-year-old. And again, not that you can't have a back and forth about it, but when you're in a full-blown debate, no one's getting anywhere. No life lessons are being learned. Everybody just ends up angry. And it's also harder to get kind of past all that anger if you have been in a full-blown sort of power struggle argument. The other way we get tripped up is we're focusing on our pride. You can't say you hate me. How dare you not listen to me? It's about me. How dare you? I'm a grown-up. And the thing is, kids actually didn't get that memo. Like, they don't come out with like a booklet of like how they're supposed to be, and it's like, we must respect our elders. And the truth is, some elders out there don't actually deserve respect. But I'm assuming all of you are fabulous. But the thing is, we can't focus on our pride, because when we do, we're really losing, again, that life lesson. And we can't focus on what our kids are telling us. And, you know, maybe they're upset and they're super mad and they're acting out because their plans got canceled. You know, again, your kids can be mad at you. We are not above their wrath. They're human too. The thing is, though, they can't be unkind. They can't be, you know, not thoughtful with their words. So you want to focus on adding those wanted behaviors, rather than getting caught up in our pride and only focusing on squishing those unwanted ones. So if your kid's like, you know, I hate you, you're still mean. It's like, okay, you definitely seem super mad. What happened? Let's talk about it. And you know what? Your kid might stay mad at you because you won't let them eat glue. You know, I'm just telling, because that's what happens in my day. Someone's often angry at me because I won't let them, you know, stick paint in their friends' ears or eat Legos because I'm a terrible person. But it is important to not focus on our pride and really focus on, again, and I'm going to say this a million times, teaching those life lessons. We also get a little tripped up when we focus on immediate results. Change does take a little while. And even if when you implement these new ideas and these new strategies, you will see little glimmers of hope in that first week or two. But large change does take time. And also, when you do change up your discipline method, or you do change up some of the workings of your household, your kids might push back a little bit, so it might get a little tougher before it gets easier. But don't give up. It really is important to give it time to really focus on what you're doing and power through, because again, change does take a little bit of time. So this is the big one. We really get tripped up when we don't follow through. And I know, like, I've said it already like 15 times. I'm gonna say it again because it's so important. If you say it, you have to do it. Because when we don't follow through, there's really no incentive for change, whether you're a kid or even a grown-up. You know, sometimes, I mean, I'm never going to be late to my job, love my job, and it only would hurt me if I'm late to my job. But just say, you know, we've all had jobs maybe when we were younger where we were like, they don't seem to care that I'm 10 minutes late. Maybe I'll keep being 10 minutes late. I'll sleep 10 minutes later. So we all need incentive to change or to stay on the right track or to stay focused or make the best choices. And it really might get loud and it might get messy because follow through is not always easy, but it's so important. Because if you don't mean what you say, what is the motivation for your kids to listen to you? And it really is about the follow through has to be one then done. So what that means is you're going to give a heads up. Hey, bud, if you throw the blocks again, I'm going to have to close the blocks and put them away for today. It's really important that you be safe. So they throw the blocks again. Okay, bud, you know what? I'm gonna have to put them away. And it's really important to do so. You really have to put those away. No extra chances. No when they bat their eyes because you know they do, like, please, 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 I won't do it again. You really need to follow through. Most important thing in discipline. Also, we want to make sure that the consequence isn't confusing and disconnected. And we talked a little bit about this before, but this is a big space where things get really tripped up. Sometimes the consequence is huge and the kids won't understand how it's connected to the offense. So maybe you are late for school and they won't put their shoes on and you're like, you know what? You didn't put your shoes on. Now I'm going to take all of your toys and put them away. Now, number one, you're probably not going to do that because you're going to have a really bored kid on your hands. And that's going to be really difficult for everyone. But it's also way too big for just not putting shoes on. So we want to make sure, again, that those consequences and those reactions for actions are connected to, you know, whatever the behavior is that you're sort of trying to change and tweak. So let's move on to what's holding us back. So why aren't we disciplining? Because I hear this a lot with clients. They're just like, I just can't. It's just too hard. It's so difficult. It's just easier to just let them do what they want to do, even though it makes me mad or I get upset. So there are a few things that are holding us back. We're just too tired. Like, we're tired. We're grown-ups. We're just too tired to get into it. And the great thing about positive and productive discipline is it actually doesn't take that much work, because we really just let the consequences do the talking. And we jump in so early and so quickly, we don't even have that much time to get super duper fired up. The other thing is we don't want to make our kids sad. You know, a lot of us, you know, are working, our kids are at school, and maybe we only have like a little time with them at night, and we don't want to make them upset. Like, we want their time to be fun, or we just don't want our kids to feel sad, because we want them to be happy all the time and enjoy childhood. Okay, but the thing is, sadness is an important emotion, and it comes with life. We don't want to deprive our kids of feeling all of the feelings that life has to offer, and also learning how to cope with all of the feelings that life has to offer. And, I mean, if they are a little sad about the consequence, maybe they won't do that thing again. But we don't want to be afraid that, you know, we're upsetting our kids. It's okay. It's important for them, again, to feel all the emotions that life has to offer. And, you know, we also want to ask ourselves, because words are really important. Is your kid sad, or are they super mad at you because they have to take responsibility for their actions? Because sometimes realizing that your kids are actually, they're not sad, they're mad. They're mad that, you know, you took away the TV because they weren't doing their jobs, or you closed the blocks because they were throwing it. They're not sad, they're super mad at you. And sometimes that's an easier emotion for us to carry. Like, oh, okay, I get it, they're mad. Because again, we don't really want to see our kids sad. So the other thing is, we're kind of afraid to see the tantrum. So we're afraid of the tantrum, and I want to tell you, do not fear the tantrum. Don't be afraid of it. You don't even need to punish it. Look, even we have tantrums sometimes. Like, we're not perfect. Sometimes we slip up. Just let it happen. Let it run its course as long as your kids are safe. You know, they don't necessarily need to have a tantrum right in front of the stove where the pasta's cooking. But as long as they're safe, let the tantrum run its course. And as they calm down, you can sit next to them, sit with them, get them a glass of water, see if they need a hug, talk to them about the topic. The tantrum is not, though, a substitute for the consequence. And that's really important. You still have to follow through. Just because they had a tantrum and they're super upset that the blocks are closed, that doesn't mean that the blocks are now open. That didn't actually help them learn the life lesson. They just got mad about the lesson. So you still have to follow through. But you don't always have to stay for the tantrum, especially if you have kids that are bigger. If they're old enough and they're safe, you can tell them, listen, I'm going to give you a little space to feel this, and when you're ready to talk, let me know. You can also go back and check on them in a few minutes. And the reason I tell some parents to do this is because when they stand there and watch the tantrum, it tends to make them angry. So now they get angry, and now they're yelling about the tantrum, and now there's like 2 or 3 people having a tantrum in the middle of the living room. I'm not asking you to walk away and totally abandon your children, but walk away for a few moments, make sure you can kind of regain your composure. Also, that can help the tantrum settle down a little bit, because if we're the catalyst for the tantrum, if we stay there, it can make the tantrum go on further and further. So it's really about knowing your child, knowing what's best for them, knowing how they react, you know, when they're upset and react to you. But don't fear that tantrum. It will pass. And the other thing is, it's too hard. Discipline is too hard. You don't want to fight. Again, you don't want to hear those tantrums. You don't want to debate. You don't want to carry your kids away from wherever or grab toys. It's just all so exhausting, and you're like sweating, and it's difficult. But here's the amazing thing about positive and productive discipline. if you stay calm and clear about the consequences and act super fast. And when you let those consequences do the talking and not us, and don't get pulled into a fight, it's actually not that hard. And it does take practice. I mean, it's definitely easy for me to say because I've been doing this for a long time. But it is easier to follow through quickly, to have those discipline methods in place than to be arguing and fighting and all of that fun stuff, because it is not fun at all, actually. And lastly, some of us want to be different from our parents. So I've had some clients want to stay away from a lot of forms of discipline or discipline in general because they didn't really like the way their parents did it. So they're like, we're just not going to do it. I don't like how my parents did it. I don't want to discipline our kids. I want everyone to be happy all the time. The thing is, you don't have to agree with the way your parents did it, but if you didn't, it's a good time to ask yourself why. So what would I do differently? What didn't I like about it? So you don't actually have to discipline like your parents, but you can still discipline, because it's really important that kids, and of course we, take responsibility for our choices and, you know, have those reactions for actions and fix anything that needs to be fixed. So those are kind of things that are sort of holding us back and we have to get past. So now we're going to get to it. This is why you're all here, to learn about discipline. So does anyone have any questions or anything so far? If you do, feel free to ask away or type away. So we're going to get to it. So you want to be really clear about what you expect from your kids. You want to explain the exact behavior that you want to see. You want to give the words, you want to give the tone, you want to paint the picture. So what you don't want to do is say, hey, I want you to be good at grandma's house. Because they're going to be like, all right, like I don't know what that means, but okay. And their view of quote unquote good and your view of quote unquote good could be very different. So you want to be really clear about what you expect from your kids. You also want to be really clear about whether they can live up to those expectations and whether we could even live up to those expectations, because we can't expect more from our kids than we expect from ourselves. And we also want to tell them why we're expecting what we're expecting from them. So these expectations, super clear, and we want to be really realistic about it, because honestly, kids can't be neat and quiet and helpful and nice all of the time. Neither can we. So again, make sure that what we're expecting is something that they can handle. And that also varies with age and temperament. So keep both of those in mind. Here's the question right now, and I will take a break to answer your question really quick. So the question is, what about bad language, potty words? What would be the natural consequence for this? Well, we would probably make it more of a logical consequence, and we're going to talk a little bit more about what the difference between logical and natural consequences are a little later on. But one of the things that I do, there's a few things, but one of the things that I do is if my small friends are using potty words, that kind of says to me that maybe they need to go to the potty. So I'll ask them, you know, oh, we need to hop up now and take a potty break. And they're like, well, no, I don't want to do that. I'm having fun. Like, what are you kidding me? I don't need to go potty. And I'm like, but you're using those potty words. Of course, I've already explained why we don't use those potty words. There are other words we need to use. And for us, there's a lot of little kids in the class, and they pick things up super easily. So we really want to stay away from those potty words. They do get out of hand, and so I explain other words that they can use that are silly and super fun. But if they're using potty words, they need to stop what they're doing and go to the bathroom, which is so annoying for them. But it's not terrible, and I'm not mad, and I don't yell about it. But I'm like, no, bud, you got to go. Every time you use potty words, you got to go potty. And they're like, I'm out. I'm not doing this. So annoying. That's so annoying to me. They don't like that kind of stuff. So that could be a logical consequence that you can use. Another thing, if you do need to level up a little bit, could be like, you know what, we need to nix some of these videos, if you guys watch videos that you're watching, because I think these potty words are coming from them. And, you know, there are even kids shows that do have potty words or shut up in them or things like that we never would expect. So you can always close, you know, their video time, or maybe certain books, if they're older, certain books that they're reading. Like Captain Underpants, or those kinds of books can have some potty words in them too. And if you can't handle those things, you can't have those things. So that's a real quick kind of like how to deal with those. You're welcome. All right, we're going to jump back into getting to it. So you want to make sure, again, that those consequences are connected and they're doable. You want to start with consequences that are small. You don't want to take Disney World away. Well, first of all, you never want to take Disney World away because you already paid for it. You're not going to do it. But you don't want to go there because it's impossible. You're not going to take Disney World away. And it's so huge and super upsetting. So it'd be like, wait a minute, what? I didn't clean up and now I can't go to Disney World? That's crazy pants. So you want to start small. Also, if you take away so many things, it's going to make you nuts in the end. So you just want to, like, if they're throwing the trains, close the trains. You don't need to close all of their toys. They don't need to sit out for, 20 minutes. Just deal with whatever you're dealing with at hand. And again, if your child writes on the wall, you can just close down crayons and have them clean it up as best as they can. Obviously, a younger child is going to probably do less of an awesome job than maybe a 9-year-old, but it's really all about life lessons. You also want to be clear about the consequences that will happen when expectations aren't met. Because if your kids know what the consequences are, they can choose their path. If they know what will happen, the unwanted behavior may not occur, or it will stop really quickly. So I always want to tell someone, hey, if you throw the blocks are going to be closed. I'm not just going to march over and just be like, oh, you're throwing blocks. You've never really thrown blocks before, but I'm going to close them today and I'm going to put them away and I'm screaming at you. We don't want to do that. We want to make sure that our kids understand that they're dictating their day. And this is something that I tell my kids all the time. I'm always asking them, who's in charge of your day? And they know the answer is them. I didn't get up today wanting to close blocks or close painting or actually have to ask you to sit down because you're really not being safe with your body. That's not what I wanted out of the day. I wanted to have a good time and I want you to have a good time. But I make sure that they know that their choices lead their day. Not that anyone needs to be perfect because none of us are. But if they're not being safe and thoughtful, their day may not be as super fun as if they are safe and thoughtful. Again, and I know I'm going to repeat this 75 more times, you have to follow through. That's the most important part of it. None of those batting eyes, please, 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 I won't do it again. No more one more chances, please, one more chance, and no earning it back. And this comes as a surprise to a lot of people. When I say, nope, once something's closed, it's closed. And you can decide how long you want to close it for. So if you have a really small child, like a toddler, maybe you close it for the morning and after nap time you try it again. If you have someone bigger, you might close it for the day. If you have someone a lot bigger, maybe you close it for a couple days until they, show that they're more responsible. But whatever you say, you have to stick to it. They can't earn that thing back. Because if they do, and they figure that out, that's really rough. Because what they've learned is, oh, I can basically do whatever. Something will get taken away. I'll be nice for a little bit. I get it back, and all is right in the world. So that's the problem with earning things back. It doesn't really help with the changing of the behavior. And I'm not too worried because most of the people that I talk to, too, have lots and lots of stuff in their house. So there's always something else to do. Does anybody have any questions about any of that? So now we're going to talk a little bit about consequences and about those natural and logical consequences. So natural consequences, those are the consequences that happen naturally. That's why we call them natural consequences, without adult involvement. So your child takes the cars to the restaurant and you're like, please don't take cars to the restaurant. Every time you do, you leave them there and you are sad. Please don't do that. Well, they take the cars to the restaurant and they lose them and you do not go back and get them. That's a life lesson that they've learned. They're like, oh, oops, I did that thing. Or they leave their toys out and, they get rained on and super messed up. That's just what life threw at them. Or, and this one's really tough too because you don't want to see this, but it happens to the best of us and it's a really great life lesson. Say a child is being not thoughtful or super bossy or unkind to their friends or, when they're all playing a game and their friends are like, you know what? we're gonna go home. I don't really want to play with you right now. You're not really being very nice to me. That's a huge life lesson, and that's an important life lesson, and I think, we all need it at some point. But those are natural consequences, because they're sort of what life doles out. Logical consequences are the ones that we do. And the thing that makes them logical is that they fit whatever the unwanted behavior is. So again, child throws the blocks are closed. Your child watches TV instead of doing their homework, well, then they obviously can't handle the TV, so the TV is closed until they're all caught up and show you that they can be responsible with their homework. The other thing is, a lot of people that I've talked to, they're using super blanketed punishments or disciplines. So no matter what, maybe the TV is closed, or I had a client who, no matter what the unwanted behavior was, they would take away dessert at the end of the night. And their kids were like, yeah, that's all good. I mean, I'll forgo dessert for one night to do whatever this thing is that I really would like to do. I'll get dessert tomorrow. That's cool. And it's really hard for kids to understand how to take responsibility for their actions if those consequences are not connected. So again, you really want kids to take responsibility for their actions, so those consequences need to be connected. You also want to stay calm, and this is super hard. This takes practice. You want to stay calm. It is the key, because kids really like getting a rise out of us. It kind of feels powerful to them, and sometimes it's like, well, if I'm upset, you're going to be upset. I'm taking you down with me, my friend. So if we stay calm, we can nip a lot of behaviors in the bud, and it also feels better for us, because we're not like burning with rage and yelling and screaming and fighting. We just want to let the consequences do the talking. So we have to sometimes fake it till we make it. And so sometimes I tell people just to stay calm and find, I either call it your vanilla or your Valium voice. So every time you want to scream really, really loud, I want you to try and talk calmly and quietly and stay calm. And sometimes you're gonna, again, have to fake it till you make it, and then it becomes easier and easier. But if you let those consequences do the talking, you're gonna find yelling happening less and less and less and less. And again, gotta follow through. Gotta follow through. So I figure it's really important to talk about real life, occurrences that could happen. So let's talk about real life lessons, and we'll practice those. So say your child hits someone. It happens. Kids do it. Doesn't make them terrible people. They get mad and they hit. So you want to make sure to have them ask the person that they hit if they're okay. You want to be like, are you all right? I hit you. Is there anything I can do? And you want to also focus on why. Why did the child hit? Did they need space? Did they want a toy back? Were they angry? What was going on? And then you want to work with them to handle the situation in a more productive way. So if they're like, yeah, I hit my brother because he grabbed the blocks from me. It's like, okay, I can understand that makes you pretty mad. But we don't want to hit in this house. We don't do that. So we want to use our words. If your brother grabbed it, you could just say to him, hey, I was using that. Can you give it back? If he doesn't listen to you, instead of hitting him, come get me and I will help you. I will come back. But I don't want you to hit him, because if you do hit him, then you're not being safe, and I'm going to have to close the blocks for you. And I don't want to have to do that. So that's one way to deal with hitting and that kind of situation too. But we also really, really want to find out why. Why were you hitting? Why were you grabbing? What was the thing behind it? Because again, if we just take out the unwanted behavior and don't put the wanted one in, we're losing some time for life lessons that are really important. So your child won't stop using unkind words. And this is tough. I mean, it's our job to keep everyone emotionally safe. And again, that includes us. Because sometimes grown-ups will let kids talk to us in ways we would never let anyone talk to us in the world. So you want to find out what the kid's trying to say. Like, why are you so mad? Like, why are you screaming at me? Or why are you screaming at your sister? What's up? What's happening? What's going on? Have them use calm words. But if they continue to be unkind, they could be excused from the room, excused from the activity. The words can even be silly, But what you want to focus on is intent. So I've had clients where they're like, I don't know what to do because one of my kids is sort of teasing my other kid, but it's like not really mean. They're just being kind of weird. And maybe they're saying things like, you have purple hair, when the kid doesn't have purple hair. And now your other child is super upset. Or your shoes are green. And it's like, my shoes aren't green. So we don't want to focus on the words. We want to focus on the intent. So if the intent is to hurt or bother or annoy or get a rise out of someone, we want to have a reaction for an action. So it's like, listen, you're not being really thoughtful at the table and we're playing this game together. If you can't be thoughtful with your words and you're upsetting your sister, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Okay, you did it again. I need you to walk away and find something else to do. So it's not even like they necessarily need to be in timeout. They just need to leave that activity. If it's late enough at night and it's almost bedtime, maybe they need to go to bed because they're too tired to make safe and thoughtful choices. So again, all of this is connected, and notice that I'm not yelling, I'm not screaming, I'm really being focused and calm with my words. Again, it is not super easy all the time, but with a little bit of practice, it can happen. So we talked a little bit about this before too with the shoes. So, well, I gave that example of the shoes as opposed to the compost. But say your child won't put their shoes on. So if you have time, the child will be stuck. And stuck is one of my go-to sort of discipline methods. And what it is they just can't move on until they do the job at hand. So they can't move on until they put their shoes on. Maybe they end up missing an outing. They won't go to the zoo. They don't have time. But this is, again, their choice, not yours. And so you tell them, like, I'd love to go to the zoo with you, but you need to put your shoes on. And this is your job. And until you put your shoes on, we kind of can't move on. Or if you don't clean up these toys, we kind of can't move on. And I would really love to, because, you know, the fam's about to watch a movie, and I'd love you to come with us. But you're kind of in cleanup part of the day, and you're stuck here until you can kind of finish this up. So always putting the ball in their court, and that's what stuck is. But that's if you have time. If you don't have time, then you can do practice, which is what we talked about earlier. Hey, it looks like you forgot how to put your shoes on. If I have to put your shoes on, then when you come home, you're going to practice putting your shoes on. And only do it once or twice. I had a client that was like, yeah, but it's 10 times better. I'm like, no. More is not more here. That's just going to create a whole angry situation, and that's the life lesson will totally be lost. So, you know, shoes on, stuck, practice. These are tried and true methods. Everyone I know loves practice. And again, notice that I'm using a really calm voice. I'm not screaming. I'm not yelling. It just is what it is. It's life, my friends. It is life. Does anyone have any questions about any of that? I want to make sure that that's all clear. And when I send you guys the booklet with all the information from the class tonight, I'm also going to send you a blog about stuck and practice, so it'll have even more information about it, because those two, I'm telling you, they change behaviors so well, and they really do fit in to whatever you're doing. So sometimes we are a little stuck for a consequence, and these two can kind of help you with that, because sometimes you do have to take the long and winding road. So some last bits. Again, make sure that you are staying calm. It is hard, but someone has to be rational, and it is not going to be your child. It is just not. It's not going to happen. So we have to, as difficult as it is sometimes, we have to be the grown-up, and we need to stay calm and focused. We also need to be clear, make sure that our kids know what's expected. A lot of misbehaviors happen because of lack of clarity of what the rules are. You know, maybe they can jump on the couch at grandmom's house, but they can't jump on the couch at your house. Maybe it's okay to run at Jimmy's house, but it's not okay to run at your house. So we really want to be clear about what is expected. Also, you might have a lot of things that are okay at your house, but when you go to grandmom's house, you can't run there, or, you know, you can't touch all the things because there's lots of delicate stuff. So you really, really want to be clear about what you are expecting. You also want to disengage sometimes. We want our kids to like us and feel supported and heard and understood, but not everything is up for discussion. And if a fight is starting, you want to nip it. You want to get out. You're the captains of your team, and some things just are what they are. At our jobs, some things are what they are. In our relationships, sometimes things are what they are. And yes, we do want our kids to talk to us. So we want to give them a chance to be heard. We want to hear their side. We want to hear their feelings. We want to hear their thoughts. But that's different than a debate, a negotiation, and an argument. We don't want that. And we also want kids to learn to respect what other people say and what other people need and what other people want, because their wants and needs are not the only ones that are important. Even though some of them are still in a developmental stage where it's normal for them to be selfish, and not selfish like grown-up selfish, but really just really care about what they need and only know to care about what they need. That doesn't mean we can't stretch them. If I don't want someone sitting on my lap because, you know, maybe it's too hot out, or I'm tired, or I'm all lapped out, I'm done, and I tell you, you can sit next to me, if you're on my lap, I can say, you know what, I'm going to get up and walk away now. I need a little bit of space. And that's okay. It's okay for me to have wants and needs. And even right there, that's discipline. It's a reaction for an action. You weren't hearing me, and I gave you the option to sit next to me, but you didn't take that option. You wouldn't get off of my body, and this is my body. So I got up and moved. And that small, small, little, tiny thing in itself is discipline. And so that child will learn, like, oh, if I want to be connected, I need to hear her words. And her words right now said that she's just all lapped out, or it's like 125 degrees outside and she just can't do it. And you want to express your ideas and your needs and wants and end that discussion. It's raining, so we're not going to go to the playground. And I hear you really want to go, but we can't. I'm not going to say it again. I'm going to talk about anything else you want except going to the playground. I'm really finished with this conversation. And I end conversations a lot. And again, notice I'm not angry. I'm not being mean. I'm not shutting them down. I'm like, I heard you. Totally did. Heard that you wanted to start with cookies at lunch. Totally get it. Cookies are great. But I need you to start with the food that fuels you, which is healthy food, but we call it food that fuels you. And I'm not going to talk about it anymore. I'll talk about anything else, but I'm closing this conversation because the back and forth is just infuriating. Ooh, can't use words now. Also, if we're fighting with our kids, they're like, oh, well, you're still here debating this. I have a chance. I have a chance to change your mind. And in all honesty, I'm sure it's worked because sometimes we get sick of the fight. We're done. We're like, fine, eat the cookie. I don't care. Whatever. So you want to keep it short, to the point, hear your child, but end those conversations and do not get pulled into those backs and forths and fights and all that stuff. We also want to keep in mind that we make mistakes too. We're not perfect. We can't expect our kids to be. Sometimes we're late to work and we're snippy and we're making the wrong choices. We're all still learning. We're all still learning how to be positive and productive members of society. We make mistakes too. And again, we can't expect more from our kids than we expect from ourselves. And something, to ask yourself when we're really, really, really frustrated is, why does my kid think that they can behave this way? And I get this a lot from clients. They're like, I don't know why my kid's doing this. And my answer is really simple. And it's kind of a little hard to hear sometimes, but they do it because they can. If behaviors were clearly unacceptable, they wouldn't occur. I know this is super harsh. And I don't mean they'd never occur, because again, we all make mistakes and we all go down the wrong path. But you really wouldn't see them as often. Now, that being said, how do you make those wanted behaviors clear? You do it by having consequences for actions, by being stuck, by practicing, by acting fast. That's that one heads up and following through right away. No arguments. Let those consequences and reactions for actions do the talking. Even if your kid's yelling and screaming, which they totally will, that doesn't mean that we have to. The thing is, the longer we fight, the more our kids think that they're going to get their way, right? Like I said before, they're like, oh, well, you're here. I'm down with this. I'm going to keep going with this. You are going to break. I've seen it before. So we really don't want to do those things. And again, we really want to emphasize that it's their path that they're choosing, that this is where their life lessons begin. So we want to be clear about the expectations. We want to follow through quickly. We want to end those discussions. And we want to reopen those discussions, though, once everything's calm. We want to go back to our kids and say, hi. So you were super mad because I closed blocks. But let's talk about why I did it. Why did we have to close blocks? What were you doing there? Oh, right, you were throwing them. Okay, so what are you going to do next time? So we do want to give them a chance to talk about what happened. We want to revisit the discussion, but we don't want to do it in the heat of battle because then nobody's listening to anyone. And again, I want to kind of end with what we started with and have this quote because I really, really do love it. And remember that we're not managing an inconvenience. We're really raising a human being. We're mentors, and that's our job. Our job is to mold and create positive and productive, awesome human beings that will go out in the world and be weird and quirky and funny and awesome. We don't want to squish their spark. We don't want to squish their personalities. We want them to be who they are in all of their glory. But we also want them to be thoughtful and wonderful and helpful members of society and community and team and family. So I want to thank you guys for coming today. If anybody has any questions, feel free to ask away. Don't forget that for coming tonight, you guys get 25% off of 1 month of coaching. And don't forget that free 30-minute call before anything even starts, because you guys can